This is not a train attack. This is the sudden constriction of the breathing tube that runs from Crimea to the front.
A line that looks small on the map determines whether thousands of soldiers in the field can move or not. As long as Crimea remained comfortable, the southern front kept flowing. That comfort was shaken this clearly for the first time. Because when a fuel train coming out of Crimea stops, vehicles on the left bank of Kherson are forced to stop as well. In early February, a fuel train on the Gvardiska line in Crimea was hit. This was not an ordinary shipment. The fuel backbone of Russian forces in the south is fed through this line. Especially for units holding on to the left bank of Kherson, this route is the main artery that answers the question of whether units can move or will remain in place. Information gathered from the field by the ATESH network shows that after the strike, fuel deliveries were seriously disrupted, shipments were delayed, and some units were directly put into economy mode. Vehicle use is being restricted, patrols are thinning out, and armored units are forced to plan their movements within a narrower scope. There is no panic at the front, but the tempo is clearly dropping. The reason this line is so valuable is simple. The railway passing through Crimea is the most regular and safest flow of fuel heading to the southern front. Road transport is slower, more visible, and more fragile. Sea routes depend on weather conditions and port security. As long as the rail line functions, the rear areas of the front are supplied in an orderly way. Fuel at the front is not just fuel, it means movement. If there is no fuel, the armored vehicles exist but wait in place. The fact that this strike came during loading shows that it is possible to infiltrate the line at a point that is not absolutely secure. Defensive reflexes are oriented toward the front. Rear area lines are often protected by habit. Reaching this point means not so much breaking through defenses as moving through where the defense is not looking. This suggests that the objective is not to make noise, but to disrupt the flow. The moment the train is hit, the issue is not the explosion itself, but how many hours, how many days fuel fails to reach the front afterward. The result was felt immediately on the ground. On the left bank of Kherson, some units imposed restrictions on fuel use, deliveries became irregular, and command was forced to reallocate remaining resources to priority areas. Such redistributions are invisible at the front but effective, because while movement increases in one area, reflexes weaken in another. When the flow is disrupted, plans at the front become more fragile. When speed is lost, initiative gradually changes hands. This means that the logistics habit built through Crimea is being targeted once again. These lines have come under pressure before, been repaired, and resumed operation, but every repair becomes a new marker point for the next strike. Now we come to a point where the same logic is operating not on rails, but in the sky. Because this time, the issue is not a line being disrupted, but the breaching of the defenses that were assumed to be protecting that line. Near Kotluban, in the Volgograd region, successive explosions were recorded at a large Grayu arsenal site. The first sounds were perceived as a single hit. The secondary detonations that followed showed that this was not an ordinary contact. The smoke rising from inside the depot area and the continuing blasts made it clear that what was struck was not a single structure, but the ammunition itself. This is also why the surrounding area was evacuated. When ammunition burns, fires are not put out, they spread outward. FP-5, Flamingo cruise missiles were named as the means of this strike. This marks the second official time this munition has appeared in the field. A week earlier, its name had surfaced for the first time in the targets at Kapustin Yar. The fact that both targets are in the Volgograd region, about 120 kilometers apart, is not a coincidence. Air defenses breached at one point being penetrated again in the same region within a short time indicates that the defense is struggling to generate reflexes. After the first contact, this region would have been expected to be tightened up. If a similar infiltration is happening in the same geography, despite that, what is breaking is not the defense layer, but the defense habit. At this point, why FP-5 Flamingo is being talked about becomes clearer. This missile is a platform that advances at low altitude in the classic cruise missile logic. The prominent claim recently is that Flamingo's flight profile and navigation system have been updated. Low-altitude flight narrows the field of view of ground-based radars. When you drop below the radar horizon, air defense systems detect the target late. A target detected late slows the defense's reflex. The critical component here is electronic warfare. A system dependent on satellites can lose its way under heavy jamming. A system that references the terrain itself is less affected by jamming. In other words, if the missile finds its way not by the sky but by the shape of the ground, it can maintain its route even under electronic blackout. This is an upgrade that disrupts the familiar jam, confuse, shoot-down chain the defense relies on. The Russian side said it intercepted 5 missiles. However, footage from the field and the secondary detonations show that at least some reached their targets. What matters here is not the number. Even a single hit at an ammunition depot can create a chain reaction. When an arsenal is struck, the issue is not the building burning. It is the uncontrolled disabling of the stocks inside. Such centers are the invisible source behind the artillery fire at the front. As long as ammunition depots function, pressure at the front continues. When a depot falters, the firepower at the front also becomes irregular. The timing of this strike is also notable. At a moment when the logistical flow through Crimea is already under strain, putting pressure on a major arsenal that supplies the southern and southwestern axes means loading the same system through 2 different arteries at once. On one side, the flow of fuel is slowing down. On the other, the center of ammunition supply is being shaken. What is being broken here is not a depot wall or a few missiles. What is being broken is a habit. This area has adapted, this line is now closed. The infiltrations that occurred at 2 different points along the Volgograd line within a short interval target the defense's comfort of thinking the same place won't be hit again. If a region remains permeable even after being struck, what comes into question is not the defense layers, but the defense reflex. Now the picture moves one step further. This time, the issue is not a rear area close to the front. It is the depth that Russia has almost marked on the map as they won't reach this far anymore. In the city of Ukhta in the Komi Republic, thick black smoke rose over a Lukoil refinery. This facility is about 1,700 kilometers from Ukraine in a straight line. In other words, this is not the front line, but almost the threshold of the Urals. This is the longest confirmed unmanned aerial vehicle strike recorded so far on the battlefield. A point seen on the map as a safe rear area suddenly entered the target envelope. Reaching such a distance shows that the attack was not random. If a drone can penetrate this deep, the objective is not to burn a refinery on its own, but to demonstrate that the defense is being stretched across thousands of kilometers. Footage indicated that long-range Liu-T-type kamikaze drones were used in this attack. These platforms are known to have a range of around 2,000 kilometers. The truly critical point is their method of navigation. If you advance with a system that can maintain its route in an environment where satellite signals are being jammed, the defense's habit of creating electronic blindness weakens. In other words, what wears down the defense here is not the drone itself, but the defense's inability to stop it with the methods it is accustomed to. The Ukhta refinery is a facility that processes millions of tons of crude oil annually. Refineries like this do not directly fill the tanks at the front line, but they are a key link in the chain that keeps the rear area fuel cycle running. As long as energy facilities function, military logistics are fed from somewhere in the background. When these facilities come under pressure, fuel shortages at the front are felt not at a single point, but along the entire chain. So what is being struck here is not just an industrial site, but the sense of reliability in the steady flow of fuel. In addition, a fire broke out at the Progress Defense Plant in the Tambov region. This facility produces guidance and stabilization components used in missiles and aircraft. In other words, parts that can be considered the brains of frontline platforms take shape here. The fact that this factory has been struck before shows that once repaired, it can become a target again. A facility that has been hit once is not erased from the map, but it is now under constant watch. Every repair becomes a potential marker for the next strike. At the same time, disruptions to energy infrastructure were confirmed in the Bryansk region, with outages reported on some lines. So, in a single night, 3 different arteries were put under pressure: energy, the defense industry, and fuel infrastructure. This is more than a single strike. This is a pressure model that forces the defense to remain on alert not at one point, but across a geography stretching thousands of kilometers. When the defense has to look everywhere, it cannot fully focus anywhere. When layered air defenses are stretched over vast distances, gaps inevitably appear. And those gaps become the route for the next infiltration. When you place these three pictures side by side, the pieces make sense not individually, but as a system. The lines running from Crimea to the front are slowing, the arsenal in Volgograd is under pressure, and the refinery near the Ural threshold has entered the target zone. Pressure is being applied not to a single point, but simultaneously to the fuel that feeds movement, the ammunition that feeds firepower, and the rear areas that keep both alive. This is not a story of "we hit one place." It is an approach that disrupts the habit of the rear areas operating in comfort. To avoid missing more analyses like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Share your views, tell me which topics you want me to focus on next, and we'll shape the upcoming videos accordingly. Wishing you calm and good days ahead.